right, we are going to get started. All right, welcome friends, beautiful people. We are here tonight on the unceded lands of the Ohlone Ramaytush peoples, and we'd like to acknowledge the many Ramaytush Ohlone families and tribal groups as the rightful stewards of the lands on which we live and reside. And the library would also like to acknowledge the painful situation our country is in regarding Black Lives Matter, and know that the library is not a neutral institution, and we stand behind fixing our own systemic racism, and we stand behind solidarity with Black Lives Matter. The library, I provided some links into the chat box there. And there was lots of resources in there about Indigenous culture as well as Black Lives Matter. So check those out, some really great, the map that I also put in is really great. You can type in anywhere you are in the world and it'll tell you what native land belongs, what native land you are occupying. All right. And so some other things, today is National Voter Registration Day, so please make sure you're registered to vote, and you have until October 19th to do that. So make sure you take care of that, so important, more than ever. Tomorrow we'll be having a presentation about San Francisco's voter procedures. So all the ways in which you can vote, there will be question and answer following the event. So come check that out. We are in our Latinx Heritage Months. We're so excited. We have so many programs coming up for that I'd like to tell you about. I'm going to breeze through this so we can get on with tonight's program. We call it Viva. Many authors, including Mr. Benjamin Bach Sierra in conversation with Luis Rodriguez. Lots of art, including Calixto Robles. On Sunday, we have Daniel Lazama. I encourage you all to register for that event. It is going to be so good. My mind is blown. His art is gorgeous. And we're definitely celebrating Benjamin Bach Sierra. He is our On the Same Page author for September and October. And he has written a sequel to Barrio Bushido. And it's a long-awaited sequel. People love this book. People love Benjamin. He's an amazing guy. He's an activist, an educator, scholar, and an all-around cool guy. And then in conversation with Luis Rodriguez, we cannot beat this. This is like a check mark in my people that I have wanted to promote for so long. I love my job. So blessed. And Daniel Lazama, like I mentioned. So I encourage you to register for those, or you can check these events out on our online SFPL live platform. October coming up is National Domestic Violence Awareness Month. We'll be promoting resources on that as well. So many great things. These are all Viva events, Cuban graphics in the Bay Area. Calixto will be doing a Dia de Muertos event, and that will be in Spanish. Should be really exciting. And we're super excited about our One City, One Book, our 16th. It's not necessarily our annual, it got kind of wonky in our world. So it's the 16th One City, One Book. And it'll be, the main event will be in March. And we'll have a lot of other events surrounding. We encourage you to check out this book now. It's kind of a heavy book, so you may need to come back to it back and forth every now and then. Beautiful book, beautiful writer, beautiful artist, and such an important topic. If you don't know Chanel Miller, get the book, because you probably know the other person involved in this book, which I don't want to say his name. And so important to me, and there is 8 days left. Take your census. I know it's a government thing, it's scary. You may not want to do it, but so much rides on this. So much federal funding comes to us for really important things. And it's just so important. And it's another thing that's trying to be cut. So it's an act of activism and resistance to take your census. Please do it. And there will be a lot of, if yeah, I haven't bugged you enough about it, because I know I mention it at every program. There's going to be, this last week is a huge push for taking your census. So let everyone tell everyone to take their census. Library to go now at 6 locations. Placeholds on all those books that I just mentioned. And just some PSAs: wear your mask, protect my library family who works out there as disaster service workers in our food banks, contact workers, contact tracers, and all the other amazing folks that are working out there serving us daily in the streets. There is still free COVID testing happening, sf.gov/citytestsf. And we always want to thank our friends of the public library who have also pivoted with us during this amazing, weird, and strange times. They now have an online bookstore which you can purchase lots of books from. So I'm so excited tonight for tonight's artist talk. This is sort of a new thing we've been doing in the virtual land, is art talks, and they've been really well received. So I'm super excited that I could get Alexandra Blum back. And I say back because Ali and Calixto, Ali's husband, were both booked for summer at our big summer stride events that we had coming up, and we all had to derail that happening. So tonight, Ali is going to be discussing her recent work, which is art in the time of COVID. And I was gonna read her statement, but I'm gonna let her just tell you all about that, because I think her work is so beautiful. And like many artists that I've seen lately during this time, they are producing so much work, and it's so amazing to see. And it is a tragic and grief-stricken time, but wow, the amount of work and art and music that is coming, I think, is what saves us all. Alexandra Blum received her BFA from Cornell University in painting and her MFA in printmaking from Washington University, St. Louis. She's had residencies in Oaxaca, Mexico, the DeYoung Museum in San Francisco, and Ali actively exhibits group and solo shows, including the DeYoung, Cornell University, Hartel Gallery, the SFPL Public Library, Museo de la Filatelia, also in Oaxaca, Front Gallery, SOMARTS, Paxton Gate, Curiosities for Kids, Mission Cultural Center, and the San Francisco Jewish Library. Ali teaches at the Drew School, and the students serve as a constant source of energy and inspiration. She has conducted workshops, live art demos at SF MoMA, the Young Friday Nights events, the Academy of Science, Asian Art Museum, Intern Program, and the Jewish Museum. She is also a member of the California Printmaking Society. All right, let's turn it over to Alexandra Blum. I'm gonna unmute you, Ali. All right, it's all you.
Thank you.
One more thing, I'm sorry. If everybody wants to put their thing to speaker view, you'll get a much better view.
Okay.
And now I'm muting myself, Ali.
Okay. First of all, I want to thank everyone for coming. I'm really grateful to have this opportunity. And this is a series of, we're an intimate group. So if I was going to have people just type questions, or you can ask them as I go. And I have about 45 slides, and I'm going to do half up to about 20, and then open up for questions. So first, thank you, Anissa, the SF Public Library, and friends and family and new friends who have come to see this art show of mine. During the Corona, this is called the Corona series. This is the work I've been doing the past 6 months. And I wanted to start out by saying my work in general, I focus on things that may not be apparent and vulnerability. So these are 2 works I did before the Corona pandemic, and they're about border separations and children being taken away. So the first one is a monoprint, and it's called Border Separation Boy, and the second one is a mother and child. Other themes that I focus on before Corona was endangered species, and here are two different images. They're wood panels. The first one is called Acid Rain, and the second one is called Migration. And I'm thinking a great deal about endangered species and climate change and the growing acidity of rain and water. And, since the 1970s, 29% of birds have died off in the United States and Canada. So I think a lot about this. And right before Corona really started to take a hold here, I was organizing a show at Puerto Alegre, which is a fantastic restaurant here in the Mission. And it was a woman's show investigating climate change and speaking to climate change. And this is an image I did. And I was thinking about the water, so the rising tides, pollution, plastic. And again, you see the crown or barbed wire on the mermaid's head. And then in March, we had our last day, I think around March 11th or so, of teaching. And then we went to remote learning. And during that time, it was really interesting to me because suddenly I had time to make art, and I started my Corona series. And this one is called SF Corona. And as you can see, at this point, I didn't realize how serious everything was going to become. And there's I'm starting to develop my imagery, and there's the coronavirus, and there's the spray, which I think of aerial spray, and the whole idea of 6 feet. And this was done the first day of spring, March 19th, 2020. And I really didn't understand what was happening yet. I thought we'd be back in a couple weeks. And I wouldn't say I wasn't taking it seriously, but I would say I couldn't get my mind around everything. A few days later, I did this piece called COVID Pandemic, and I was thinking about this idea of nature making a comeback, and I think I was romanticizing, in a way, as many people were, this pandemic, because social media platforms were telling stories that I was reading about dolphins coming back to Venice, and things recovering, and then true things like, in the people in the northern Indian state of Punjab were in awe because they could see the Himalayan mountain range, which was visible 100 miles away, and because of the reduction of air pollution, because of the coronavirus lockdown. But then after a couple months, and I will say these slides aren't completely in order because I tried to group them so they make sense, I began to really think about who was being affected by this pandemic. And the first piece is called Shelter in Place, and it's mixed media. And the second piece is called Homeless, and they're small works on paper. And I began to really think about the global anxiety about the outbreak of coronavirus, and then the spread of so much misinformation and scapegoating in schools and communities, and the incidences of bias and harassment and bullying and isolation and xenophobia, and particularly against Chinese people or those who are perceived as being Chinese, and also the walking by people who are homeless and thinking about elder people by themselves in their houses. And I began to really realize what a huge moment our people were going through and suffering through. And I began to go into my old prints and rip them up and add to them. So these two images are lithograph and screen print, and I just went in and kept working into them. And then as I was revisiting the old work, I started to do portraits of the most vulnerable populations for me, like the work of the people on the borders and the border separations, the first two images I showed, the people that were not being fully considered. So the first image here is called At Risk Sex Worker and At Risk Waitress, and people who have to go to work and there's no support for them. And the money is featured because it's all about the money sometimes and who has the support. And I really began to think about growing up in the 80s in Ithaca and New York, and the AIDS crisis. And, you know, over 675,000 people died of AIDS, and even every year, 13,000 people pass. And the parallel of dehumanizing the people suffering with the illness and the misinformation. This image is called, these two images, I took monoprints that were, when they first were made a year or two, well, probably 3 or 4 years ago, were about organs and health. And I ripped them into quarters and started to really think about the visceral effect of this disease. The first one is called High Risk Border Separation Girl, because it was coming out all of these young separated children and the lack of protection for them against corona and the spread of the illness. And the second image is called High Risk Uninsured. And I was thinking about elders, the workers working in elderly care, and the illness disproportionately affecting people of color. And that I began to think, well, so many people are passing, and it seemed like it just was a number, and no one was thinking of these people as individuals. These two images are called Corona Prison, and the second image is called Corona Essential Workers. And I was thinking at this point about Jeff Bezos, whose net worth is over 202 billion, according to the Bloomberg Billionaires Index, and not providing care, not providing for his essential workers masks and protections. And again, to the image on the left, I was thinking a great deal about people who are incarcerated and the lack of protection for them. And what could one do if one was in a prison? This image here is called Ascension, and I'm still thinking about specific individuals at this point. And there was a woman named Vera Varner who passed away, and she's probably in her 70s in Brooklyn. And the window for me represents hope or an ascension. But I think it takes knowing someone who dies of a disease, at least for me, to understand that people are dying. And I think that was my first touch in a really personal way about this illness, this disease. And the second image is called Incarcerated. And it just, for me, shows the confusion of like money, like you can't protect these people who are in prison, and like they weren't sentenced to die of an illness in a prison, and healthcare. And there's the image of a heart in a tree of growing, and the tossing of the moon. And I guess all the information coming to me, I just couldn't process it. And these paintings and drawings and reworking of things for me were sort of healing and processing these moments and understanding for myself a visual journaling of what was happening. And then the work changed, because this piece is called Finally a Win, June 15th. And when Title VII of the 1964 Civil Rights Act, that prohibits discrimination in the workplace on the basis of race, religion, national origin, and sex, the court, by a vote of 6-3, said sex is a distinct characteristic but inseparable from the concepts of sexual orientation and gender identity. So finally there was a win for the LGBTQIA plus and everyone, you know, a protection, an unexpected decision from the Supreme Court. And this image for me is like a celebration of people, and these stacked Stonehenge totem figures for me are just another, they're characters, they're people, they're feelings. And then finally, a little more news that made me happy on June 18th. And this piece is called Another Win DACA. And that's when the 5-4 ruling, the High Court provided a life, well, let me go back up. The Supreme Court on Thursday, to give rights to DACA dreamers and extend their rights for 700,000 people. So I felt grateful, and these images started to come to me, these figures. And in this image, I felt celebration and happiness and some hopefulness. During this time, and remember, these are my journaling of this COVID experience for me as I'm living it, listening to the news, and just as far as I'm concerned, fake realities, not alternate realities, and fake news. And I began to see this orange wolf in my mind. And this image I really relate to. It's called No Mask for Me Person. And the image next to it is called Play It Safe, Wear a Mask. And the No Mask for Me person is the person that doesn't mind. They don't care. Either they're misinformed or they are actively don't mind. And I was thinking about all the people who would refuse to wear masks and come right up to other people. Didn't mind. I'm young, or I don't believe in this. And I found it so troubling because it's so selfish, and it's not that hard to wear a mask. It's really not a big ask. So that piece really resonates with me. And next to it is a piece I did actually for a poster contest through an organization called Amplifier, which I also recommend to my students to submit to. And they do a lot of social justice posters and work. And this was an image I actually made, one of my first screen prints 30 years ago, of the girl jump roping, and I added the mask and the text. And I was just thinking about safety and encouraging people to make the right choice and protect children, especially people in high density urban settings. This is going into the summer, and I'm going to take questions after about 6 or 7 more slides. Summer dreaming COVID and summer dreaming. And these 2 images I did in the summer because I started to think about, well, young people and the time of summer, especially when you're in high school, is a time of romance and self-discovery and you know, doing what you want to do and reading books or whatever you do as a teenager. And I was thinking, what a sad time of isolation for people. And the blue for me represents like the interior life or mind or dream of a person, and a trance-like state. And also I'm starting to put a lot of flecks in the work, which I see as corona spray. And the oceans will appear a great deal for me, representing climate change. During this time, we also learned that the corona was aerosolized and traveled through air. And I had a real cognitive dissonance for the beauty of the summer against this backdrop of death and illness, and also the news relentlessly giving out misinformation. And this, you know, I couldn't process anything anymore. And it just became patterns for me, this hypnotic repeating pattern and the cognitive dissonance of it all. During this time, also protesting for the BLM movement against the murder of people of color was taking hold. And since the murders of George Floyd and Breonna Taylor, an estimated 15 million to 26 million Americans have taken to the streets to protest police violence. And I started to try to draw these protests. And these images, I think, have a lot of layering because there's so much happening. There's the pandemic, there's death, there's people putting themselves on the front line and at risk, wearing masks, looking for social justice. And it was very powerful for me, and people protesting across lines, racial lines, and this movement growing out of this time, so interconnected with Corona and the pandemic of violence against people of color. And I want to share this image and contrast them. One is called Ascending Protester. All these images are 15 by 11. They're small. And a piece I did 2 or 3 years ago called All That Glitters Is Not Gold. And for me, I think they've become a lot more complicated and layered because there's so much going on right now and so much misinformation and so many people that were choked and shot, and it's all coming to light. And I mean, I'm sure it's not all coming to light, but the power of that and the complexity. So this time has been a real awakening for me as a person and as an artist and as a member of, it's a lot. And I just would say for these two images, and then they're contrasting two different experiences. The first one's called Summer Politics, and the second one's called Phoenix, Summer Protest Rebirth. And the first one of Cerebus represents all the dog whistles from the current administration and all the hatred and misinformation and spreading of Corona and the risking of people. And the second image is a Phoenix representing the BLM movement, and it's not a romanticized vision for me. It's that if you're a Phoenix, you have to burn up first, and there's a huge sacrifice between the rebirth of the Phoenix, and I've always found that to be very powerful. The next image before I break is COVID Summer Still Protesting, and it's a lithograph I did a while ago, and then I went back in and added screen printing and drawn elements. And for me, this Still Protesting image is about the pain of loss, and that people shot by police have lives and identities, and or however that they are killed have identities and families and love, and that when a person passes, especially in this way, the trauma circles everyone in that person's life. So I'm going to pause now can you show me and see if there's any questions. And thank you everyone for being here.
There's one about the size of your works.
Oh, yes. So they are small, 11 by 15 up to 22 by 30. They're almost all on paper. The first images were 22 by 30, and they're a full sheet of printmaking paper. And the black wood panels are 18 by 24. So the last couple I showed and the essential workers, all of those are 11 by 15 because they were a full sheet of paper that I ripped down into quarters. And I like that size because I could just work and it's like journaling for me, these images. I think when I was doing them, they were a response. I wasn't planning anything. And then after looking at them and trying to put together this talk, I began to realize what I was addressing or trying to.
Have you produced a lot of work during this time?
More work than I produced since my 20s because I'm at home. And I would say I've done about 75, 80 pieces. It's probably my most prolific time.
I don't think you're probably alone as far as artists go in this realm.
I've spoken to a lot of people, and it's been a time because there's so much going on. And I think if you're a singer, you might sing about it. If you're a poet or a writer, and for me, that's my way of processing and understanding.
Do you have any questions, folks? Don't be shy. We can even unmute you.
Yeah, we're so
how hard is it to take a piece you did before and create a new piece from it?
It's oddly liberating and nice because as someone who's been doing art a long time, I have so much work. So it's satisfying to rip a piece up and go into it. And with monoprints, you can have, if anyone's a printer, they're really beautiful backgrounds. So you can just get in there and just rework them. And if a piece is 4 or 5 years old, it doesn't, I don't have an attachment anymore, if that makes sense. It's going to hopefully get better. And if it doesn't get better, I can just paint on top until it does. And I made color scheme patterns. I think, yes, and I see there's a poet in the group, and I want you, and there's so much to write about right now. I think the colors are just from painting a lot of the colors are produced through oil-based inks. When you monoprint, you get a lot of veils of transparency. I love acrylic gouache because it's not plastic. Not that acrylic isn't beautiful, but it has a kind of oil, that has a concentration of pigment. So a lot of those colors I can thank to a gouache because it's very strong. Any more questions? I'm actually going to have to call my daughter back for a minute and ask her to help me reshare. So give me 1 sec.
Those teenagers, they escape at the moment you need them. Could you talk a little about maybe show one of the pieces that represents a return to color? I'm going to unmute you, Ali.
Mute. Okay, ready? What was the question? I'm sorry.
A little about one of the pieces that represents a return to color palettes from your earlier work.
Okay, I'm going to go, let me see. I'm going to go back a little bit. I would say these go to my past palette. And I would say these do. So the backgrounds of the golds and the red are strong colors that you get when you monoprint. You get so much transparency. And so I think I've always been a colorist. I've always used very strong colors in my work. And so I think you can see here the matte of the monoprint against the gouache, which light blue square, or the dark blue in the second image. I'm not sure if that answered the question. Did that make sense, or?
Yes, it did.
Okay, I'm gonna keep going, but if anyone has questions, they can just ask, because we're a nice intimate group, and I want to thank everyone for coming. I'm very grateful for you all being here. I'm gonna keep going with the imagery and say this is a screen print that's 22 by 30, and this was called Nature Makes a Comeback, and I was just thinking, you know, some humor, you know, trying to find the positive, the mischief of nature, watching my daughter's cats chasing insects down the hall. And then the second image is 18 by 24. It's a mixed media monoprint. It's called COVID Antarctica Melting. And the melting of East Antarctica is deeply worrying, and that huge chunk fell off. And so that's the wing of the mermaid coming off for me. And you can see the rising tides again. And the Antarctica as a whole contains about 90% of the planet's ice, enough in theory to raise global sea levels to an average of roughly 200 feet should it melt. So I just keep thinking all these things are happening all at once. And this is, as I said, my way of journaling or documenting. These are images that I reworked. The first one is called COVID Missing You, and the second is called COVID Summer. They're 18 by 24 mixed media monoprints. And you can, for me, these both have rose petals in them, which represent maybe funerals or passings. And the figures aren't quite touching. They could be lovers, they could be parent and child. It doesn't matter to me, but it's the tenderness of relationships and the feeling. And I think the separation. And the second image also has scars. And then there was a turn from the Stonehenge figures to these figures, which I've done before, but came into sharp focus with the DACA and 7 images. And these are called, they're 18 by 24. The first one's called Corona Waiting for Blue Skies. And the second one's called It's Been a Long Time. And they're about community for me. They're group interactions, but yet each character is separate. They're also monuments to nature and to Stonehenge figures and to totems. And they just came out of me. I don't really have a clear answer of how they came to be, but they're very related to Corona. And the spray for me is Corona spray. The little symbols have fallen from the images. And in the first image, you can see the blue sky peeking through. And that for me really represents how I feel, like, oh, when are things going to get better? So the first piece especially, I really relate to this time. These 2 images I put together, they're called Hope and COVID Bark. They're both 11 by 15 mixed media monoprints. And the first one I dedicated in my mind to doctors, nurses, healers, people providing healthcare and clinics, and trying to be hopeful in this time. And the second image, again, is the barking of administration and the violence that is done by false words as the spread of Corona increases. These 2 images, again, we have Alone Together is 18 by 24, and it is the figures, I just see everyone going outside and socializing, but not touching, and the spray all around us, and everyone just trying to do the best they can. And the beauty of the daily, but a disconnection too. Everyone's by themselves together. And this piece to the right, COVID Song, which is 22 by 15, is also a mixed media monoprint, and just bird song, just trying to slow down and see what is beautiful around me. I remember when we hit the point of past 100,000, now we're approaching 200,000 deaths, and just what a meaningless number it is. And in this piece is a reworked monoprint, and what I'm trying to do here is show that behind that number is a person and an individual, and that it's so hard, like I said, before the death of Vera Varner, it really was hard for me to understand that people are individuals. And this piece for me illustrates that this person is hidden behind a number. You can't see them as they pass. And now we're at 200,000. And these, again, are related to the Stonehenge figures. And it's just trying to keep balance. It's called Out of Balance. But it's just people trying to understand what's happening around them and protect themselves, and trying to find nature and just the overwhelmingness of everything that's happening, the confusion and dissonance. And the colors for me represent just all my different moods coming tumbling down. This image is called Corona Sheltering. It's mixed media, 15 by 11. I did it August 11th. And it's about different situations and how some people, in my mind, have multiple houses. Some people are homeless. Some people are incarcerated. Some people are in deportation camps. Many people in one little apartment. And the inequities and the loneliness, but yet also the comfort of people being together and the colors. So this is how I imagine all the houses if we could see through them, of what people are doing and who's lucky enough to have people with them and who's solo. Also during this time, this is done, this is a lithograph that I painted back into with mixed media and gouache and hand-drawn elements. It's 15 by 11. I did this at the beginning of August. And as we know, those of us in California and in the West, well, many states, the fires right now with the global warming and the corona pandemic. And I was thinking of the rising waters, the trees regenerating, the redwoods, and just hoping that the forest can heal itself. The piece to the left is called Lucky. It's small. It's about 8 by 10. It's mixed media, screen printing, monoprinting, hand drawn, and it's called Lucky. And I was thinking just of chance, or is it chance or privilege of who is okay and who's not and how it happens. And there's dice and mitosis and meiosis represented in the screen. And it's just also feeling worn out, feeling inside, the wishbones are inside. They're wishing everyone well, but they're in their interior spaces. And Corona Help is a lithograph mixed media. It's 17 by 13, and it's just no color. It's me starting to feel worn out and sad, but trying to be positive, trying to engage with my, I'm very grateful for my family and my siblings and my friends, and trying to just stay positive. And on that note, here's more images. Corona, California Smoky Skies, mixed media, and the next one's called Trying to Stay Positive. And they are images representing the fire to the left that we've been going through and the darkening skies. And on the right is going through this Corona experience and all the people and the spray and trying to just keep a positive feeling. This image is called Corona, California Burning. This mixed media 22 by 30, and just the overwhelming nature of the fires. And in the back, you can see a representation of a minotaur or of the current administration. As I was thinking about the idea of sweeping the floor of a forest. I'm going to speed up a little bit because I want to have time for questions. This piece is called Corona Genie, and it's just everything coming together in my mind, the global warming, the Corona, the BLM movement, the distress of society, and this genie is just coming out. This piece was actually made for a portfolio at the Mission Cultural Center, and I went back in and worked into it. And someone was asking what that's like. It feels good because it makes the piece time travel for me. And this piece does for me feel like it conveys a lot of what's happening, the chaos. And these closing images are again about the California wildfires. It's called California Corona Still Smoldering. And I did it August 27th. And this was as it was getting more smoky, Corona rising. These are all 15 by 22. This image is called Corona Vitriol, when DeJoy was throwing out voting machines and people were stealing mailboxes, and I just couldn't believe it. I felt like I was in a cartoon, but it was really happening. And I think this piece relates to the mermaid piece, Interior Oceans, the disregard for life, for rights, for nature, for resources, and trying to swallow and consume everything. These images are called Not a Sucker, and the second image is called Loser. And I just was all dumbstruck when those quotes came out, though not surprised, and just the dehumanization of people who were killed in war, and who knows why they went, if they had to, if it was an opportunity, if it was they were forced, if they wanted to serve their country. Not everyone can get out of service with bone spurs. So, and the cemetery within the figure of the people who, the veterans who did survive, I think they carry the deaths forward within their lives. And as a teacher, I've been thinking a great deal about the teacher experience. So the next two images are a teacher and student. The first one's called Ascension of a Teacher, because teachers have been dying. The hands are raising and growing inside of her body, asking questions, and she's trying to heal and serve knowledge. And she's a middle-aged teacher, seems to be underappreciated sometimes, the profession, and expendable, reducing a worker down to like the essential workers and the Amazon worker, like the lack of care for people who are trying their best. And to the right it's called Constellation. And I was thinking of the Corona coming out of the girl's mouth as constellations. And there's a birthday cake, and the idea of not being able to blow on candles. And the eternity symbol for me represents that children are not invulnerable to this illness. And the following image again is a child and a teacher. The first one's called Return to School, and the second one called COVID Teacher. And you can see the corona coming from her neck, and she's breathing it out. And maybe she has to go to school. Maybe her parents are working. And I really have so much empathy for the kids that have to go back. And the teacher leaning back, trying to teach, and something like a weapon pointing to his throat. And this, of course, was the orange sky we all saw recently. And when I think about everything that's happening, I just try to tell myself, this is called Milky Ways 22 by 30. And I'm just trying to stay positive and realize we're just a speck in the universe, and that hopefully with everyone voting and taking action and taking care, things can get better. People will vote. And I'm gonna, with these two images, the one on the left is called Herd Immunity. Pandora's Herd is 22 by 30. And this idea that people are gonna be herd immunity, I don't think I think we should wear masks and take care of each other. And I feel like it's a Pandora's box answer. And I'm hoping that we take care of each other and not just have this idea of herd immunity. And the image to the right is Rest in Peace for Arju B for her passing. I just wanted to honor her. I just finished that today. And I would end with this image called Corona, Count All of Our Votes, because I want everyone to vote and stay hopeful. And I want to say I do feel hopeful, and that these images are strong, and they're my way of processing what's happening right now. Also, someone asked about work. There's my website is there, alexblum.com, and my Instagram. And I'm going to stop sharing now and thank everybody and see if there's questions. I'm very grateful for everyone who's here. Thank you. It's a lot of talking. Does anyone have any questions or thoughts?
I think there's a question from Lewis. Science informs a lot of your work. What is your frequent source of reliable science news?
Asked from a science colleague. Oh no, Luis. I think the news, and I looked things up. Like I don't really know about the Antarctica, so I had to look it up. And the New York Times a great deal because it's written in a way that I can understand. It's not too complicated. Or birds. I usually use New York Times a lot. But I'm always open to learning if you have good sources, because I know you do. And I'm really grateful for everybody coming. I did not know that, but I have a subscription. You can get the free New York Times. I didn't know that.
I'm scrolling to see if there's any other questions. I know there were, well, somebody asked if you were going to do an RBG, which is there.
I just did it. I just made it. I've been thinking of, and I want to do more, but I just wanted to do it for tonight. And my partner.
Any of your work exhibited in hospitals or clinics?
I had, oh my God, CMPC, I think it's on, I have had stuff at Kaiser a long time ago. I have had work at the hospital that's on, probably Lisa Bostic will know which one I'm talking about. It's on Valencia and Cesar Chavez. That hospital.
St. Luke's.
But St. Luke's, thank you at St. Luke's. So yes.
It's not called St. Luke's anymore though.
It's gone, the whole building. Yeah. And I would say, I want to thank also, I saw some students were here and I'm really grateful you all came. I really appreciate it. And they really serve for me, my inspiration. I love being a teacher and I love being around youthful and adults too, but you know, they really helped me get through this time as well with their energy and honesty and comments and enthusiasm.
What do you hope your viewers will get from seeing your journaling, the events, and your feelings about them?
I think it's a personal journey, but I hope that people can enter into these images and feel something or understand something either through my lens or their own experience. But I hope the work is like a doorway into thought or opening up of one's heart a little bit to feel. But everyone feels in different ways and processes in different ways. And I have to be honest, when I make things, I'm in the moment. I'm not so much for an audience, like unless I'm doing a message like wear a mask or something like that. So these works were very spontaneous in a way. Because they're a reaction, you know, things kept happening. So it's like, how do I understand the world around me?
Keep happening. And anyone is free to unmute themselves if they'd like at this time. The link that I continually put in here does have all of Ali's website, Instagram, lots of resources from the library. You'll get a follow-up email from me. By the way, I'm Anissa. I am one of the librarians working, lucky that I get to work and bring all these wonderful artists and programs to you. And yes, so you'll get a follow-up email from me. And you know, you're welcome to respond to that email. If there's anything you want to see, anything that I can do to help you, let me know. Lauren, did you want to say something? You are unmuted.
Oh, no, I thought you wanted everybody to unmute. I'm
Oh,
sorry.
well, we could all unmute and do a big, if anyone has any, you know, I will unmute everyone at the end so we can do an actual clapping. But if anyone has any other questions, I'm sure Ali would love to take them.
Do you work at home?
Yes, I do. I do have a little studio in the Castro, but since I'm teaching online, in between, I'm using a toothbrush and spraying the mist, or I'm ripping up a monoprint. So I have a lot of time. I do have a studio. I'm very lucky. It's a storage space, but I've been there 20 years and it's nice. But I've been working a lot at home right now. You know, I do open studios in the past, but right now I've been home. Sometimes I go, but not so much.
Danny asks, how do you envision representing the science and politics of vaccines?
I don't know yet. It's so complicated, and so many people are so fearful of the vaccines. People have been experimented on. So Danny, I don't know. I'm open to ideas. I think that's the next one. I don't know how I'm going to do it. I'll probably screen print the syringe. I probably would do a very realistic, and then I don't know. I don't know yet. I'm just hoping one comes soon.
What's the
Oh, collage. I used to collage a lot, and screen printing almost acts like collage. If you're a collage artist, Tommy, because when you screen print, it's like a collage effect, right? It's like a photograph on top of the paper. So I think, though I may not be collaging with paper, I think the way that I monoprint and paint is collaging, because I'm collaging on top of a monoprint. I'm collaging on top of a screen, on top again with a screen print. So I think it's very collage, yeah. Definitely. That's a really great way of thinking about it, actually.
What's with the circus tent that reoccurs through several events?
Life is a circus, and it's a stamp I have, and I love it. And I just feel like it just keeps getting more ridiculous and horrifying. You know, it's like a scary horror Stephen King. Okay, that wasn't like most sophisticated, but like, it's like, I feel like I'm in a Stephen King meets SNL meets. I don't know who's coming up next, but yeah, it's just for me, the absurdity of everything that's happening.
Flying monkey.
Yeah, who knows what's gonna, you know, and the Ferris wheel. I just feel like I'm on a weird ride that I keep thinking is I'm gonna be like, oh, but it keeps going. So, I'm so grateful everyone came. I'm really grateful. Thank you.
And there are lots of great comments in the chat about
Thank you. And hi. Yeah, and I just say, make art, write poetry, keep going. Hi, Bill.
Make art, make poetry, vote, vote, vote.
Vote, vote. A
I
free
love
piece
that.
of work. Yeah.
I love the last yellow vote piece. You flew by it kind of quickly.
Oh, because I felt like it was a lot of talking.
The bright yellow one, that was gorgeous.
I don't know, the bright yellow one. I won't be sharing correctly now. Let me see. I'm not sure which one that was.
Pretty sure it was yellow.
Let me see if I can. Was it a woman? The teacher?
No, I think so.
I think I'm going to let go of trying to share because my tech person has
okay.
left.
I think I saw it on your Facebook, which people can track Allie down, like on her Instagram and Facebook, and see her work. And do you have anything else coming up? I know that you taught the Red Poppy workshop. Do you have any others?
I'm open to workshop if anyone knows any, but no, I've been real busy with my students who are, as I always say, inspiring me. And I'm just making a lot of art right now, which has been very healing. And I don't have anything coming. I hope to have something coming up, but I don't have anything in the works just yet. But I will keep everyone posted, and always reach out to me on Instagram and also my website. You can write into me there to connect.
All right, I'm gonna unmute everyone for a round of applause and adoration.
Bravo.
Yay,
Bloom.
Thank you.
Absolutely phenomenal.
Thank you so much.
Unbelievable.
Thank you.
I'm just gonna stay here.
Thank you.
Thank you for coming. I was really
Incredible.
Thank you so much for your time.
excited. I'm really grateful.
Thank you.
Thank you. And I'm
Yeah.
Incredible program. Thank you both.
Beautiful.
and thank you to the library.
Thank you.
Uh,
Thank you so much.
all right, friends,
Good night,
it does get weird with these Zoom meetings, so I'm about to just end it. Allie, thank you so much. Allie's friends and library community, we love you, we miss you, and thank you for being here.
Thank you.
for this opportunity.
Thank
Thank
you.
you. Gracias.
Thanks for coming,
Thank you.
people.
Gracias.
Grateful.
Totally
Bye.
awesome. Unbelievable. So
Lisa,
good.
love you. Lisa, keep talking.
Love.
Okay, I
I
just
mean,
let
so great.
Barbara just see you in
So
the
great.
waiting room. Unfortunately, you missed the program. We're ending. So I'm sorry.
Talk about arriving at a
Just
little
got
too
in
late.
But this is on YouTube, so everybody can watch the YouTube right after this.
Oh,
Great.
Oh, very
I,
cool.
Check
for
it
some
out.
reason, thought it was 7.
Bye, guys. Bye, Ellie.
Bye. Thank you.
Congrats. So great.
Thank you, Lisa B. You're the goddess. Thank you for coming.
Bye. Bye,
Thank you.
guys. I'll see you tomorrow.
Bye.